This is episode 598 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing.
And I'm Wally Drangmeister.
I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. This week, Wally, we saw an escalation of the situation in the Middle East with a direct attack by the nation of Iran against the state of Israel. And that normally, we're both old enough to remember when that kind of thing happened. The next morning, gas prices would be $10 to $20 a barrel higher, and prices at the pump would be 50 cents to $1 higher. And I think, again, it's great to see that while the Biden administration has done its best to eliminate or limit, American energy dominance, we still are not in a position at this point in time where this kind of happening in the Middle East will result in immediate pain for Americans' pocketbooks. So, as I see it right now, $85.67, according to Yahoo Finances, where crude oil prices are. That's up 0.3% on the day. Not exactly the kind of movement we would see traditionally in this kind of in the wake of this kind of conflict.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. And you are correct that there was not a big jump at the most recent firing and then blocking of missiles from Iran towards Israel. The other thing is oil prices have been drifting up a bit, over the last month. So maybe the market pre-priced a bit of that in there, but it was the furthest thing from panic with regard to that. The other thing that I've been noticing as oil prices have been creeping up, gasoline and diesel prices have not been going up nearly as much as I thought they would be. So I do believe that the refineries are through their switch over largely from winter to summer formula. And I don't think they're making great margins right now. So we'll have to watch that because there's no doubt that over time, gasoline, fuel prices definitely follow oil prices, but sometimes there's a lag again, particularly because, hey, oil is not the useful product. It's useful when it gets turned into jet fuel, gasoline, diesel.
Yeah, of course, it is noteworthy that prices have gone up fairly dramatically. Part of that is the summer driving season, the changeover happening in the blends. But of course, Biden and his administration has been uniquely hostile to the oil and gas industry. And while production may be at record levels here in the United States, those limits on pipelines and other policies that the administration has in place do have an impact. And it's not just an impact now, it's an impact on future prices as well. So obviously, we're praying for folks in Israel and that they survive this latest threat, and we'll see where things go next. I suspect they're not going to take the attack lying down. We'll see where this all goes. It's unprecedented, uncharted territory for all the potential conflict over the decades between Iran and Israel. We have never seen a direct war between those two nations.
Yeah, and then, one other point to make about the Iranian attack was how effective the Israeli anti-missile systems seem to be, to the point where I read an article this morning where folks in Great Britain saying, "Hey, maybe we need some, better missile defense system in this times of uncertainty with regard to." Enemies. And we certainly do hope that things that are going on in places like Russia, Ukraine, Iran, and Israel aren't a harbinger of the coming of World War III, but it is certainly unnerving for anyone who, has followed the history of the Middle East and the wars, as well as just what's going on with Russia.
Yeah, and of course, Congress has been debating and slow walking various aid packages. Those, of course, are billions of dollars in American tax dollars Both Ukraine immigration and Israel had been lumped together, then pulled apart in various different ways. It would be interesting to see if Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, put a standalone Israel aid package on the House floor, given the actions of the Iranian regime, whether he would be able to get a fair number or most Democrats on board. It seems like a different ball of wax entirely when Israel is theoretically the stronger nation vis-a-vis the Palestinians versus being attacked in a way by a much larger nation with an effective standing military. So lots of things happening, and of course, for what it's worth, we didn't have these kinds of issues when President Trump was in office. So we'll just leave that at that particular location. So also relating to geopolitics and energy, though, and an issue that does hit home right here in our state, New Mexico, liquefied natural gas. And, the Biden administration, I really don't understand their approach to much of anything. But I think when it comes to LNG policy, their export limitation is among the very worst policies that I can imagine an administration embarking upon. They have put a permitting ban on exports of liquefied natural gas, and this is uh, the LNG issue was created thanks to the fracking and the incredible supplies of natural gas that have been unlocked here in New Mexico, eighth leading producing state in the country, and across the nation. Uh, we have nations from Western Europe to Germany, other nations, and also Asia, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, Thailand, even the Chinese are interested in importing American liquefied natural gas because it will help their energy transitions. They're trying to get rid of coal. They all believe in the global warming hype as well. And God bless them. We'll gladly, well, I would gladly send our liquefied natural gas over because it's much cleaner and greener. And quite frankly, Asia is the place on the planet where they're generating more and more CO2 emissions on a year over year basis. But the Biden administration decided that foreign policy goals, weaning Germany off of Russian energy, cleaning up Asian energy production, and of course, jobs and revenue for Americans involved in the energy sector. Those three wins are not enough of a reason to keep permitting and expanding the American LNG business. So, since January, we've had that ban in place, and it is very rare that you get three separate ways in which a policy is harmful. But here we are. Joe Biden has hit the trifecta.
Yes, Paul. And, as I look at these, some of these things, you say, why are they doing it? What is the rationality behind some of these policies? Because it's like if the world can't use natural gas in the coming years for much of their energy needs, they have to revert back to coal. And we've seen that in places that are purportedly some of the greenest in the world, like Germany having to restart coal plants because of natural gas supply issues. The only thing I can come up with, and this explains a lot, but that doesn't mean it's right or that it's the way to look at things. But it seems like when it comes to green policy, uh, perfect is the goal and good is not good enough. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to, use coal, we'll shut you down. But if you're converting to natural gas, that just is not acceptable. We want you to go to a zero carbon emission source. However, nuclear is not on that list. And right now with the amount of battery technology and where the world is, that's a even if that is your goal, it's going to take a while, and what it would take to do that in the next few years directly would be catastrophic for whoever's the recipient of such a policy. So that's all I have on that one. But if there's another explanation, I'd like to hear what it is, because natural gas is a fantastic fuel source. Oh yeah, and by the way, guess what, Paul? Natural gas is still extremely cheap in the United States, extremely compared to other parts of the world. So it costs a lot of money to liquefy natural gas and transport it where it's needed. But as it comes out of the United States, its price is extremely low, and we're a good place to be able to do that.
Well, wait, there's more. There's more to this issue. Well, so first one is there is a link at a post on Heirs of Enchantment about this issue that I included. 100. It's from the Sierra Club. 110 organizations thank Biden administration and urge robust review of LNG exports and deny projects not in the public interest, whatever that means, which to them is all projects. And so that is the answer of the who and the why.
Yeah.
He's catering to the radical environmentalists. Now, I did a little digging because I actually wrote an op-ed on this issue as well that will hopefully be appearing in newspapers across the state. And we're going to hop into our Wayback Machines all the way back to 2014. And I am going to read you quotes from a letter from Tom Udall.
Okay.
Arguably one of the great environmental senators in New Mexico history, certainly family name, United States history. In this letter to Barack Obama, President Obama, he wrote, "A strong market signal from the United States that is a willing future supplier of LNG, even if those supplies are not immediately available, would have profound, positive, and immediate strategic implications." And he introduced legislation later that year in 2014 to speed up the review of LNG export facilities. That is one of many, many indicators as to just how far leftward the Democratic Party has moved. And I would also, of course, note that while Biden is, of course, the one doing the bad policy here, you have not heard a peep from any member of our congressional delegation on this particular topic publicly, as you saw from Tom Udall, who, again, second to none on being a green, kind of lefty advocate for those policies throughout his career in the U.S. Senate. But Heinrich, Ben Ray Lujan, Leger Fernandez, Stansbury, and Vasquez, none of them have made a peep about the LNG issue. Japan's prime minister was here last week. One of his purposes was to push the Biden administration to restore U.S. LNG exports. And I found a report from Williams Energy Company, Williams, known for natural gas. They said that between 2013 and 2050, the estimate of the amount of money that would be generated from LNG exports was anywhere from $716 billion to $1.267 trillion. Now, that's a good long period of time, but that is a huge amount of money that could be brought into the United States. And of course, jobs and taxes. We are $35 trillion in debt as a government. You sell more products, you get more of a return. So anyway, good old Joe Biden just highlighting how far left, and Heinrich, of course, as well, Ben Ray Lujan highlighting just how far to the left things have slid in their party.
Yeah, and one thing I will say about Udall is he was certainly not what anyone would call conservative or a pro-energy Democrat, but man, he knew the industry and he knew what was going on. I know that I was involved over the years in lots of communication with he and his office. He would come to New Mexico. He would take field tours. He would do a lot on the local level. And I assume, based on that statement of his, the national and international level. And then the other thing about those environmental groups who like this because it's in the public interest, I do think they forget, Paul, that carbon dioxide impacts the Earth's atmosphere no matter where it's generated. And so, if you come up with a policy that reduces carbon dioxide by a couple percent in the United States, while the world has to revert back to even more coal that goes up many times that amount, you are going to be making a net negative. So, that is, again, I just can't understand what their position is. Maybe they truly believe, and I wonder sometimes how many people in the environmental movement ever do the math that really do understand energy. But a lot of policies are very short sighted and very counterproductive, and I do think this is one of them.
Exactly. All right. Well, kind of from a different angle here, a national story broke this past week from a former NPR executive saying, I've been at NPR for 25 years, and here's how we lost America's trust by going left wing liberal. Basically, that is the upshot of the article. And, I think it's safe to say that we've always known NPR was a liberal news outlet, but and we're talking here now, New Mexico's various NPR stations. They are, of course, different in the sense that they are funded by, in part, the U.S. government and, to an extent, state and local governments. For example, KUNM, housed, interestingly enough, in Oñate Hall at UNM's campus.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
Throwing that one under the bus there.
yeah.
Then you've got KSFR housed at Santa Fe Community College. More interesting than that is KANW. You want to know who the owner of KANW, what government
I
entity?
happen to believe it's the Albuquerque Public Schools.
You are correct. Well
I know a
done.
lot about public radio.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? So, look, obviously, the entire media apparatus tends to be on the left side of the political spectrum, but I do think that you should be held to a higher standard when you're taking government resources. Instead, they are even more to the left than traditional media outlets are. And my own personal experience is that, I used to be asked to, and we're talking a decade ago, come on the airwaves, especially KUNM, and talk about various issues. Oftentimes it would be a panel of three or so left-wing folks. And I specifically remember one on net neutrality, which was a huge issue back during the Obama years at KUNM. But there was one producer for a relatively short period of time who had come up with what I thought was a really neat idea. He would have different people from different groups like Rio Grande Foundation, but it could be Think New Mexico, it could be Voices for Children, or environmental groups or grassroots activism groups, and they would come on and do a couple minute kind of just a brief, unfiltered, lightly edited talk about what was going on, what they wanted to say. He got replaced, unfortunately, and basically since then, I have not been on KUNM probably for the last decade. I have been on KANW, but they had a forum on the APS tax increase that they aired on their airwaves, so maybe a little bit of self-interest there. Ironically, I've been on KSFR more than the others, and just election night coverage that we've been doing, which, by the way, one of the most entertaining moments of my entire life was sitting and watching the 2016 election returns while covering the election at KSFR studios with a group of Santa Fe liberals. So watching those particular election returns was quite an amusing experience, because if you think CNN and MSNBC were ready to commit Harry Carey, it's a good thing that Santa Fe Community College is a one-story building. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, heads were exploding.
Yes.
So Paul, I I've been around too long, I guess, but in the olden days of radio, I mean, and this is back in the Larry Aarons, back then KOB, now KKOB.
Hmm.
But I would listen to Larry in the morning, and I would listen to NPR a lot in the morning. And let me just say, I think they always have spun liberal for a long time, but the reporting was very in depth and quite good. So sometimes sometimes some of the shading at the end was not good, but the reporting was very good.
Sure.
And they have shows like All Things Considered, which
Hmm.
I just can't listen to it anymore. It's I try every 6 to 12 months I'll try to listen a little bit more, and I just can't do it. It's just I think this is the fact that they couldn't handle this. We got to get rid of him. I don't think that that's any secret to anybody that NPR is much different than it was a decade or two ago. I don't think there's any question about that. But maybe that's the kind of truth that cannot be spoken without repercussions on the left.
Yeah, and again, they refuse to even cover the Hunter Biden laptop story. They've just gotten more
What story, Paul?
yeah, the Hunter Biden laptop
Huh?
story.
I never heard of
And of
that.
course, there's greater fragmentation in the media market, spurred on by this kind of
Mhm.
uh, uh, organized media. We are our own small media outlet here, the podcasts, and that ability to listen to things that are truly of interest to you personally, as opposed to whatever the producers at KUNM or whatever national NPR show. Those that it makes a big difference. So, not sure if it is a situation that could or would change, but uh, I do think it is high time to defund from a government perspective. At least the federal government defund NPR, but in general, uh, state or nationally funded media not a good thing. All right, now Wally, this latest issue is something that we've kind of talked about, but I really never thought I would see it put before me in the kind of black and white that we're seeing here. So, uh, Newsweek covered a story, and this is just a Census Bureau report, which found that only one state in the entire country saw a reduction in the number of immigrants within its borders over the last 10 years. The report, I've got a Newsweek story from April 12th, and I blogged about it on Airs of Enchantment. It is fascinating to see this map, which shows that the numerical increase is incredible in Texas, Florida, even California, which I wouldn't exactly say, oh, that's the most economically dynamic place to go. But only one state in the entire nation saw a decline in the net number of immigrants living within its borders. And I will only issue the caveat that uh, data may be a challenge to collect here, given we, of course, have legal immigration, and those people are probably all too happy to talk to the Census Bureau and explain why they live there or whatever. Illegal immigrants probably not so excited to see government agents come to their door. So you may not have as many illegal immigrants as legal ones, but the report does address immigrants as a whole, and it's fascinating to see the results.
Yeah, and Paul, it is interesting. It's interesting to see some data on this issue that, I have seen personally, and we've definitely talked about it. As I travel around the country, I see a lot more signs of large numbers of immigrants everywhere else I go than New Mexico. If I go to Denver, I go to Dallas, Austin, there's just people are talking about it. There's way more visible in terms of people. And again, you don't always know, but it's like there's a good chance that you can spot early first generation immigrants in the United States, but Albuquerque, not so much. So, why is that? I am not sure. Maybe they think the crime's too high and the schools aren't good enough and they don't like the gross receipts tax. I don't know what it is, but yeah, the fact that they come through New Mexico, at least some do, but they are not using New Mexico as their final place to reside and try to integrate or not into the country, into the United States.
Well, first and foremost, it is worth treating and talking about illegal versus legal
Right.
differently, because legal immigrants pretty much have all the rights of American citizens. They can go wherever they want. And like most Americans, they will travel where the quality of life and the job
Mhm.
opportunities are the best. So that is an indictment right there of New Mexico's policies and governance. Illegal immigration, they're obviously more concerned with steering clear of government entities where they have maybe family connections, where they can best fit into the broader culture, et cetera. So there's those factors which impact this issue. But Newsweek talked to Christopher Erickson, who I'm going to have on the podcast in a few
Mhm.
weeks,
Okay.
who is he lists himself as director of New Mexico State University's Center for Border Economic Development. So another Aggie for you. And he was asked what the primary reason we saw the decrease in the foreign-born population in New Mexico. And this is not Paul guessing or Wally Drangmeister putting this quote in his mouth. This is his own quote. The primary motivation for foreigners to immigrate is to find a good paying job. New Mexico is a low income state with relatively slow job growth. This makes it less appealing for foreigners. And he talks about the overall annual economic growth between 2012 and 2022 was 6.8% on average. The state ranks 44th for per capita personal income, and he basically is saying a lot of things that we would be saying about the issue. So it is a complicated and unique and important issue because obviously we've been talking about New Mexico's economic policies for at the Rio Grande Foundation for 18 plus years. Now we're seeing, even relative to immigrants, and we've talked about this, that you don't see the number of immigrants moving here that you do in other states. In this case, and what we're talking about, it has been the illegal situation, which are obviously more apparent in a certain context because of the sheer numbers of them crossing the border. Uh, Fascinating stuff there, and really an indictment. I did hear, and this is pure hearsay, but somebody who I he was watching the news, and he said that they interviewed an illegal immigrant, and they said that the crime in Albuquerque is too bad. I don't. I assume that that is an accurate quote, but I would also cite New Mexico's heavy dependence on government, both federal and state, because if you are doing jobs under the table illegally, you're probably not going to want to try to work for the governments, no matter which level of government. There's going to be other private sector opportunities that you're going to go for.
Yes, and let me just say, believe me, Tipping Point, New Mexico is not a necessarily a new scoop, but it's amazing how we do talk about issues sometimes way ahead of
Oh,
when
yeah.
they get to the public consciousness, and this is certainly one of those. And it'll be interesting to hear what the New Mexico State University professor has to or official has to say about this as well.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, Rich States, Poor States came out, and shock of shocks, New Mexico ranks again 38th overall in outlook. We also rank 38th in performance, meaning that our performance level is exactly where our outlook is to be expected for the foreseeable future. I would say that Rich States, Poor States is the most comprehensive in terms of the amount of data brought to bear. Go to richstatespoorstates.org for all the details, or you can see my post at Heirs of Enchantment. The states that perform, that are near New Mexico, perform very well. Utah's number one, Arizona's number three, Colorado's 17, Texas is six, Oklahoma's ninth, and of course, we're 38th. Um, it's not just about taxes, it's got regulations, it's got all kinds of different policies in place, and we try to highlight a few of those differences. Uh, but the upshot is that New York is dead last, and Vermont is second to last. California is 47th. Uh, New Mexico is kind of that interior donut hole relative to our very economically dynamic, fast-growing neighbors.
Yes, and the one that I'm always highly interested by is Utah because Utah's natural resources tend to be largely related to tourism. They have some of the most beautiful places in the world in Utah, but it's not a big oil and gas producer. I believe they have some coal, but it's one of those. When we look at the things that are integral to a modern economy. It's a trained workforce, and the demographics, younger population, low crime, good education, those things are super important. And, it's one of those things, it's a good news, bad news for New Mexico. It's the thing that there's nothing necessarily structurally keeping New Mexico from doing that. But if they don't do that, all the oil and gas money in the world is not going to necessarily diversify the economy. And like I say, Utah, they could be something where, hey, maybe we got to go and see what they're doing up there as a place to start. But I think I've highlighted some of the differences, by the way. So, and that's something. And again, demographically is another area. And, New Mexico, as it keeps the population about the same, growing very, very little, but it keeps getting older and older. That's one of those. That's a ticking time bomb of economic activity that we maybe have a while to fix that, but we don't have forever. If no progress is made in the coming decade about keeping our younger people working in our economy, we could get into the equivalent of a population death spiral.
No doubt. And another issue that we need to deal with is crime. Uh, Quite a story this week from Channel 7 KOAT. Doug Peterson of Peterson Properties. For full disclosure, he is a former podcast guest and a friend of the show. He's also the foundation's landlord, but he had an interesting situation at his Central and San Pedro Central Mercado property, where he says they have over 35 cameras just for that property. And they had a private security firm and are spending $200,000 a year for security at that property alone. He said the company was removing the same criminal trespassers, openly using fentanyl, panhandling, damaging property, camping, defecating, urinating. He says they call APD and they won't come out. So they had a vet sec protection agency that was working to try to increase security. And these are guards who are ex-military, law enforcement, almost all of them armed. And the security company fired their customer. They said, we're done here. This is too violent and just not worth it anymore. So we're going to not be willing to protect the Central Mercado there at Central and San Pedro. And Wally, I know you don't live that close to Central. You live nearby enough, though, and it's a very important boulevard. I have driven pretty much the full length of Central, at least all the way down from the to Harris Canyon down to I-40 or I-25, I should say, and there are some very scary and interesting areas between, say, Eubank and certainly San Mateo. That is, if you want to feel like you're in a third world country, that's a great way to do it. Just go down central from Eubank to San Mateo.
Yeah, Paul. For the first time, actually, a few days ago, I the quickest route for me would have been to come up Zuni or Central from down near Highland University, and I decided to go over and come up Lomas because what I see, particularly in the evening when I was driving, it's a little bit of a scary situation. The other thing that, with regard to these areas, is that they it's kind of they play whack-a-mole. So I know recently I've heard reports that, and I live relatively close to Tramway and Central, where things are way better at Tramway and Central. Well, it just moves to another part of the city. There's times where Wyoming Central's absolutely frightening. There'll kind of be a crackdown, and then it'll kind of just squeeze out both east and west on Central. So yeah, we have a huge issue with that. And then, the other thing is they talk about oh, we have food deserts, and where there's no store where people can buy food, and that's what's going to happen. Yet another one. And believe me, the Mercado's not a Walmart superstore like down on San Mateo near Central, but certainly people are able to buy food there in that area. And as these things happen, and I'm not saying this store is going away, but if you're already having a crime problem and you can't even get a vet sec to be your security company, there is an issue. And I would just say that I do have a little bit of experience directly with that security group. The Homers Association in the area that I live has contracted with them, and anytime there's a problem, they've been very responsive, very good. And so the fact that they said enough is a pretty striking example of how bad things are in that area.
Yeah. All right. Well, we just got a few minutes left, but New York Times had a report this week, which is rare to be vindicated by the New York Times, but they said that film subsidy programs are money losers for states. And they cite studies show that these efforts typically return a quarter or even a dime on every dollar given to studios. Predominantly, they've been talking about Georgia, Louisiana, some actual red states that have gotten into the film subsidy game, like New Mexico. But of course, what applies to those states applies to New Mexico. And we do have some of the very most generous film subsidies around. And it's unfortunate because, as the New York Times recognizes, they are a waste of money. So, I'm not holding my breath that they're going to change this in Santa Fe. Certainly not under the current governor, who is a big supporter of Hollywood film subsidies and their expansion. But down the road, one does hope that economic sanity would come to New Mexico, and we'll just we'll see where that goes. Also, speaking of insanity, last legislative session, one of the most controversial, or actually, I guess no, it was announced and then passed in the 2023 session, but the capital outlay bill. And we talked about the park and Diane Dennis last week, but this time around, it's a report from Source New Mexico saying that the $10 million abortion clinic that was funded by capital outlay dollars is still on the drawing board. They haven't determined a location or any other real issues with that. And, on part of this is the government at all levels shouldn't pay for abortions. That's just a philosophical approach, whether you're pro-life, pro-choice, as long as you're moderately pro-choice. I just think it's an abomination for the government to be using tax dollars for that. But more importantly, more importantly, from a policy perspective here relating to taxes and budgets, is this is just another indicator of the flaws of the capital outlay process. And of course, the governor shoving this priority through is a big part of the problem. But of course, the idea that you're just going to sit on this money and wait and see where things go. In a rational world, they would have at least had a location lined up and figured out exactly what they're going to need. Is this really a $10 million project, etc.? But welcome to New Mexico.
Yeah, Paul, and nothing is more expensive than free money from the state of New Mexico when it comes to that. The rules, the timing involved, it can take literally, 2 to 5 to 10 times longer to get something built with capital outlay. And, that's in addition to the cost. So, not a surprise here, but you're right. It's like, maybe somebody could say, what are the really good news? What is the really good news from the capital outlay program? The number of bad examples, they just pile up almost on a daily, weekly basis. But, where does it work very well in terms of these things that are done, these kind of almost vanity projects that happen, not necessarily strategic investment in New Mexico infrastructure, so or buildings or anything else. So where's the good news? I don't know. I certainly don't see it. I don't know about you. So maybe there's people out there to say, oh, it works perfect and it worked great for our organization. And I was involved with a nonprofit that got capital outlay, and let me just say it was positive. It helped a building get built, but man, it takes a long, long, long time. So.
Yeah, and of course, especially nowadays, those prices, that construction, the inflation, not going down. So the state is sitting on these dollars, probably not investing them in anything. Not that I'm necessarily begging for the state to make more money off of piles that it's sitting on. We certainly have plenty of that, but it's another way in which the money that we have is sitting around not doing a whole lot. And again, in this case, we're happy about that, but it does highlight that the money should have never been allocated for the purpose to begin with, and that this process is fatally flawed. So with that, thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointnewmexico.nm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.